Speaking of the truth, we've been told for months there is nothing to be worried about when it comes to the voice. The advocates, including the Prime Minister, have said it's a modest change we shouldn't be afraid of.
This is a modest request.
Let us not content ourselves with modest change.
This is a modest request.
Let us not content ourselves with modest change.
A modest request.
Not content ourselves with modest change.
He told us it's not a radical proposition, but a sensible one. It's a simple, vital and practical principle that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a say in the policies and decisions that affect their lives. Well, that was back in February. But as you could see from that graphic, he changed his tune this week while giving the Lowitja O'Donoghue Oration in Adelaide. And he took a slightly different tack. That's when he said, "Let us not content ourselves with modest change. Let us not fill our hearts with the empty warmth of the merely symbolic." Well, I read the transcript of that speech and I found it full of misleading rhetoric and vague promises. But at least, I'll give him credit for this, at least now he's admitting that what the Prime Minister is pushing for is neither modest change nor merely symbolic. Unfortunately, this doublespeak is characteristic of many of those who are pushing the Yes campaign. And yesterday, I read a column by my Sky News colleague Chris Kenny in The Australian. It continued along the same theme, but this one was accusing the No campaign proponents of actually being deceptive and divisive. Now, Kenny, who's a prominent Yes campaigner, claimed the proposal was about encouraging progress and equality, although I didn't really detect an explanation of how it actually does that, aside from a Castle-esque vibe. Kenny dismissed the rationale that giving rights to one group of people in our Constitution over and above others that is based purely on their ancestry and race is discriminatory and racist. He also claimed the proposal is divisive, but only because some people are actually opposed to it. Well, that's tortured logic in any reckoning. I mean, you could just as well say there is only division because a ridiculous and racist proposal is being put up by a bunch of mealy-mouthed do-gooders who refuse to provide the details or the potential consequences of what they want. That's divisive. The devil is always in the detail with these things, and the real consequences will not be known until after the deed is done. Make no mistake, this is a constitutional experiment where the Yes side refuses to acknowledge that there are some serious questions that Australians have, but the Yes mob don't seem that keen to answer them. Instead, they hide behind a single legal opinion or a few legal opinions while ignoring equally stilled legal opinions that reach a diametrically opposite conclusion. Then they claim the support of sporting bodies and NGOs and corporates for the voice is proof that it unites us all. Again, they ignore the fact that many of these bodies are just trying to carry favour with the government. I would hasten to add, mostly to keep the grant money flowing, or in the case of corporates, to keep the ESG investors from the union super funds and groups like BlackRock, to keep them throwing money rather than having them withdraw their cash from their stock. It's basically a cabal of elites saying you are a divisive racist if you don't agree with them. And that's the technique the left have been using for years now. And it disappoints me it's now being embraced by some right-of-centre commentators. None of them can or want to see that enshrining a race-based proposition in the Constitution is actually racist. And yes, I know. We have a race-based provision there already. Section 51 reads, "The people of any race for whom it is deemed necessary to make special laws." All right, now until recently, many voice advocates were claiming that that clause was racist and it actually needed to be removed. Back in 2012, retired New South Wales Chief Justice James Spiegelman QC said when it was introduced, quote, "There was no doubt that it was a racist power and that it no longer has a place in the Constitution." Quote, "A power with respect to people is, I regard, a very dangerous power to confer on any legislature, even the Commonwealth Parliament, because it can be focused on particular groups by reason of their presumed characteristics rather than what their behaviour is or what their needs are, but just because of who they are." Robert French, a retired Chief Justice of the High Court of Australia and a notable Yes supporter, said in 2012 the term race is a term of the past. I think the term race itself is a cultural construct whose day has passed and has very little factual reference apart from what you find in so-called cultural realities. And I think we'd be better off without it. Here. I happen to agree. But now, there's actually a proposal for a new race-based provision in the Constitution. Ha! Gotcha, says the Yes campaign. I can hear you out there already. There is nothing about race in the proposal for the voice. Well, that's sophistry of the highest order. I know the word race isn't mentioned, but it is all about creating a new body that is only open to people of a particular racial background. Hence, if this proposal gets up, some Australians will be excluded from participating in a constitutionally defined aspect of our governance, simply because they're the wrong ethnic mix. Now, if that's not racist, I don't know what is. My colleague Chris Kenny, of course, proclaimed that this is about reconciliation, not racism. I have to say that too is tortured logic. I ask, how does enshrining exclusiveness bring people together? And what practical measure will having yet another Aboriginal body with currently unknown potential legal powers or authority, what's it going to do to deliver for the 3% of our citizens? And at what cost will those measures be for the remaining 97% of us? It's all unknown. But for the likes of Kenny and other advocates, simply raising these concerns or for claiming the voice is racist is actually the cause of divisiveness. Well, it's not. The voice itself is racist. The voice divides Australians. Those pushing it may or may not be well-meaning, but they certainly don't want the facts to get in the way of their opinion.